The weight of my memories is heavier than the years I've lived, and sometimes I wonder how I'm still standing. I can almost feel the chill of that night, clutching my baby brother tightly to my chest, the chaos of war swirling around us like a dark, greedy tide. I was just a girl, but in that moment, I was all he had. The letter I shoved into my pocket felt like a lifeline, an echo of hope amidst the chaos. Words scrawled by a mother who believed in better days, even as shadows loomed over us. I think of those who were left behind, the loved ones the world deemed unworthy or unimportant. I was abandoned in their eyes, a mere whisper among the screams of conflict. Yet I survived, and in my heart, I carry their stories, their silenced voices. As the years unfolded, I learned that survival is not just about holding on, it's about remembering, about sharing. Before I go on, subscribe to the channel. Here we tell stories no one else does. Stories of grandmas and grandpas the world tried to silence. I remember the scent of damp earth, the kind that clung to everything after the first heavy rains of spring. It was a bittersweet perfume, so familiar, yet filled with an underlying tension that seemed to hang in the air like an unwanted guest. The sun had just begun to set behind the hills, casting long shadows that danced with an eerie grace under the encroaching darkness. Our village, once warm with the sounds of laughter and children's shouts, lay hushed, as if waiting for the inevitable storm to pass. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as I held my baby brother tightly against me, the weight of him both a comfort and a burden. He was only 5 years old, too young to understand the chaos that had overtaken our lives, but old enough to sense that something was dreadfully wrong. I often stroked his soft hair, trying to soothe us both, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. The way he looked up at me with his big, trusting eyes made a lump form in my throat. He needed me to be brave, to carry him to safety, and yet my own heart was heavy with fear. Outside, the sounds of distant explosions echoed like thunder, a stark reminder that the world had turned upside down. Each blast vibrated through the air, sending shivers down my spine, mingling with the fear that gripped my insides. The letter I tucked into my pocket felt like a lifeline. It was a fragile piece of paper, bearing the words of my mother, written in a hurried scrawl, filled with love and desperation. "Find a way to escape," she had urged, "and do not look back." Those words echoed in my mind, urging me forward, even as doubt wrapped itself around me. I had promised her I would take care of my brother, and to find safety. But as the war intensified and our nights grew darker, that task became increasingly daunting as the paths ahead were fraught with uncertainty and danger. The streets of our village had transformed into a maze of debris and abandoned homes. I could see the remnants of life scattered everywhere. A child's toy left behind, a woman's scarf caught on a fence, and the shadows of neighbors peeking from behind barred windows. They were all watching, waiting, hoping for news that might never come. My heart ached for them, but I knew I had to focus on my brother and the journey ahead. With every step, I felt the weight of our world pressing down on me, but I also felt a flicker of determination igniting within. I could not allow myself to falter. As we made our way through the quiet, shattered remnants of our town, I clutched my brother tightly, my fingers intertwined with his, feeling the warmth radiate from his small hand. Despite the darkness that loomed around us, I found solace in that connection. It was a promise that we were not alone in this fight. The world may have been crumbling, but we were still here, still breathing. And as I glanced back at the memories we were leaving behind, a silent prayer formed on my lips. I prayed for courage, for hope, and for a safe passage into whatever lay beyond the horizon. With every step, I felt the ache of our past, but the future whispered to me, urging us to run, to flee, and to survive. I often find myself looking back on my life, tracing the contours of who I was and who I've become. It feels like a long road paved with moments that shaped me into the woman I am now, one who has lived through the horrors of war and emerged holding on to fragments of hope. Back then, I was just a girl, barely 14, with too many responsibilities thrust upon me. My baby brother clung to my chest like a lifeline, his small body wrapped tightly in the fabric of my worn-out shawl. He was a blessing, but also a heavy burden during those desperate times. We lived in a world engulfed in chaos, where the sounds of gunfire replaced the peaceful songs of birds. I remember the day our lives changed forever. The sun had barely risen when the first blasts echoed through the streets. It wasn't the first time our little town was rattled by violence, but it was the first time it felt personal. We had watched from afar as neighbors packed their belongings and fled into the unknown, their eyes filled with fear, uncertainty, and desperation. But it was different for me. I couldn't just leave. I had to protect my brother, a tiny creature looking up at me with trust in his wide eyes. My mother stuffed a few essentials into my hands: a loaf of bread, a letter that she had clutched for months, and a small amount of money. "If anything happens to us, you must carry this," she whispered, urgency cutting through her voice. I didn't understand then, but I was to be the keeper of our story, a role that weighed heavier than I could bear. As I fled, the letter crumpled in my grip, became both my anchor and my guide. It held words from our father, a soldier fighting on the front lines, infused with love and wisdom that shielded us from despair. Even as I ran through the rubble of our home, dodging the chaos erupting around me, I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. My father believed in our ability to find peace again, a calm after the storm. I held on to that hope as tightly as I held my brother, even when the shadows of doubt loomed over us like the gray skies. The letter whispered promises of reunions, dreams of safety, and a reminder of who we were before the world shattered. Just a family who loved each other fiercely. Now, as I sit in my quiet home, memories wash over me in waves. The war stripped away so much: innocence, safety, and even family members. I had to learn to navigate a world that had turned upside down, where every decision felt like a matter of life and death. I grew from the girl who fled into an unyielding spirit, a woman forged by the fires of hardship. I learned resilience from the streets lined with devastation and compassion from the faces of strangers who shared my plight. Each experience etched into my being, reminding me that amid the ashes of despair, there can still be moments of unexpected kindness. Today, I find peace in sharing my story with those willing to listen. The threads of my past weave through every encounter, connecting me to others who have faced similar trials. My brother grew up strong and wise, with laughter that echoes in my heart, a reminder of what we fought to preserve. But the echo of the letter remains, carrying the weight of our shared history and the promise that hope can flourish even in the darkest times. I am no longer just the girl who fled the war. I am a witness to resilience, a narrator of survival, and a testament to the unyielding spirit that binds us all together as siblings, as families, and as human beings striving for a better tomorrow. I remember the day everything shifted in our lives, as if the sun had dimmed and the shadows of uncertainty crept closer. The air was thick with anticipation and an unspoken fear that hung over our little town like a storm cloud ready to burst. We had been oblivious to the murmurs of discontent that began to swell in the streets. It was just a hum, a background noise to the cadence of our daily lives. But then, one morning, the sound escalated into something far more menacing, echoing through our narrow alleyways and rattling the window panes of our modest home. It was a crisp autumn morning when I first heard the distant thud of marching boots, the kind that sends chills down your spine. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, casting a golden hue on the fallen leaves, but that warmth felt distant. My brothers and I were gathered around the kitchen table, sharing our breakfast, the laughter of our youth filling the room, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfurling beyond our walls. Our mother stirred a pot of thick oatmeal, her back turned, when we heard the distant shouts and the unmistakable clamor of vehicles rolling through our once quiet streets. The world we knew was shifting, and I could sense it deep in my bones. As the news trickled in, rumors of men in uniforms and the ominous words war and invasion began to penetrate our understanding. Paul, my younger brother, clutched at my arm, his innocent eyes wide with confusion. "What does it mean? Will they take us away?" The question spilled from his lips, and I found myself struggling to find the right words. How could I explain to him that our childhood home, filled with laughter and warmth, was on the brink of being shattered? I wanted nothing more than to shield him from the reality that so swiftly encroached upon us. But I felt powerless. The weight of responsibility grew heavier, and I gathered him in my arms, promising him that we would be safe, though in my heart, I knew that promise was growing more fragile by the minute. The days turned into a blur as the situation grew more dire. We faced rationing, long lines for food, the palpable tension in the air thickening with each passing day. Our neighbors, once friends, now looked at each other with suspicion, haunted by the looming presence of an invisible enemy. I would often take Paul's small hand in mine, and we would venture to the market, navigating through anxious crowds, always on guard. I could sense the fear wrapping around us, suffocating our hope. With each food item we scavenged, I felt the dwindling of our comfort. My heart ached for the innocence that was slowly slipping away from my brother, and I vowed to keep him close, to protect him at all costs. Then came the day that would change everything. An insistent knock at the door shattered what remained of our fragile routine. I opened it to find a soldier in crisp uniform, the glint of authority in his eyes stark against the dim hallway. My heart raced as he delivered the news that our father had been taken. Just like that, our world crumbled, scattering our family into the winds of chaos. As the door clicked shut behind him, I turned to see Paul standing there, bewildered, clutching a wooden toy in his hands. I knew then that our journey was about to begin, one filled with uncertainty and fear, but also the fierce determination to survive. I could no longer shield him from the world outside. Now I had to guide him through it, letter in hand, ready to flee into the unknown. The silence is the hardest part of remembering. After the noise of the bombs and the chaos of those desperate days, it clings to the edges of my mind like an unwanted guest. I can still hear the echoes of shouting, the cries of anguish, but in the stillness that now surrounds me, those memories draw me back to the moments I spent in the darkest corners of my heart. It was a silence filled not with peace, but with the weight of absence, the kind that settles in your chest and makes every breath feel heavier. My little brother's small frame felt like the only warmth I had left as we fled, and I held him tightly, knowing that the world as we knew it had vanished. I remember the last time I saw my home. The house was crumbling around us, plaster peeling like old skin, the walls echoing with fragments of our laughter and the stories we shared. I was supposed to be his protector, his older sister who would shield him from the cruelties of the world. But as we ran, I felt that weight crushing me more than any bomb. The letter I clutched in my hand felt cold, heavy with the words I had scrawled hurriedly, not knowing if I would ever deliver it. My fingers trembled as I could almost hear my mother's voice whispering to me, urging me to find a way to safety, to find the family we had lost amidst the wreckage of our childhood. The streets were barren, almost surreal, like a painting stripped of color. I moved forward with my brother in my arms, our little feet scurrying over the debris, past the remnants of our past life. I would glance down at him, his wide eyes filled with innocence, still believing in the warmth of the sun even when the clouds loomed overhead. I tried to smile at him, to ease the worry that crept in with each step we took into the unknown. But his innocent questions pierced through the silence, each one a reminder of the childhood we were losing. "Where is Papa? When will we go home?" Each question was a stab to my heart, a reminder of the distance we had traveled, not just physically, but in the way our family had been torn apart. As night fell, we huddled in an abandoned building, the shadows of despair creeping in with the darkness. The world outside was a cacophony of distant explosions, and I clutched my brother tightly, whispering reassurances, even though my own heart trembled. The silence inside felt monumental, as if it were mocking that chaos outside. I retrieved the letter, its paper worn and crinkled, and read the words aloud in a soft voice, hoping it would bridge the distance between the past and our uncertain future. I had written about our hopes, our dreams, the love that still bound us. It felt like a lifeline, a connection to everything we had lost, to the very essence of who we were as a family. The next morning, the sun rose hesitantly, as if unsure whether to break through the clouds or retreat into silence once more. I felt the chill of that dawn in my bones, but I had to keep moving. We had to find others. seek out what remained of our lives. With each step, the letter remained nestled in my pocket, a reminder of promises and memories that felt so far away. I could only hope it would lead me somewhere, to someone who would piece together the fragments of our history. As we trudged onward, the silence wrapped around us, both a refuge and a burden, a constant reminder of what we had left behind and the uncertain road that lay ahead. The days blurred into a haze of fear and desperation, each moment heavier than the last. I remember the sounds of chaos echoing through the streets as if they were an ominous melody, a reminder of the world that was crumbling around us. The first emotional blow hit me squarely when I clutched my baby brother against my chest, his tiny body trembling against my heartbeat. He was only 3, blissfully unaware of the horrors that loomed over our lives. But I knew. I could see it in the eyes of our neighbors, the vacant stares of those who had been stripped of hope. I had to protect him. I had to find a way out. In the midst of that palpable fear, I stumbled upon a letter my mother had placed in my hands just before the chaos consumed us. It was a simple note, yet it bore the weight of our family's history, our hopes, and the love that would guide me even in the darkest times. The words danced in my mind as I ran, urging me to keep my brother safe, to hold on to who we were amidst the turmoil. "Courage is the first step to freedom," it said, but I felt like a fraud, filled with fear instead of courage. Each time I took a breath, I could almost hear her voice, but the distance between us grew with every passing second. The letter was my anchor, yet it became a cruel reminder of what I was forced to leave behind. As we wove through the alleys, dodging the angry shouts and distant rumblings of war, I could feel the weight of my responsibility crushing me. I tried to comfort my brother, whispering stories of laughter and sunny days in the park, but the truth lurked in my thoughts like a shadow. Every time he looked up at me with those trusting eyes, asking if we were safe yet, my heart cracked a little more. How could I tell him that the world we knew, with its warmth and laughter, had been replaced by this grim reality? I wanted to believe we could escape, but deep down, I feared for the both of us. The pain of leaving everything behind was an ache I didn't know how to express. Then there was the moment I saw a family just like ours, desperate to flee, their faces etched with the same fear I felt. I noticed a mother clutching her baby to her chest, her eyes wild with the instinct to protect, to shepherd her children through the storm. In that brief moment, a connection sparked between us as our paths crossed. I felt her anguish reverberating within me, a silent understanding of the burden we both bore. But as quickly as the connection formed, it was severed by the sound of gunfire, a jarring reminder of the reality we were both escaping. I turned away, tears pooling in my eyes, knowing that with every step I took, I was not just fleeing from the war, but from the life that we once knew. The streets began to fill with shadows, the air thick with smoke and uncertainty. I pressed my baby brother closer, feeling his tiny fingers clutch the fabric of my shirt as if expecting me to shield him from everything. The blend of fear and resolve was intoxicating, leaving me breathless as I moved forward. The letter, so precious in its simplicity, felt like the only thing tethering me to my past, a fragile lifeline in a world turned upside down. I ran, dodging the clouds of despair, hoping with each hurried step that I could find a place where we could be safe. But that first emotional blow had already carved a path through my heart, an unhealable wound that would remain with me long after we escaped the chaos. I remember the day the letter resurfaced as vividly as I recall that frantic moment in my youth, when I fled with my baby brother clutched in my arms. It was a dreary afternoon, the sort that dampens your spirits and makes the world seem gray and heavy. I was cleaning out my attic, a task I had put off for far too long. Dust danced in the air as I sifted through boxes that held relics of a life I had lived, a life filled with laughter, sorrow, and memories that clung like stubborn shadows. That's when I found it, hidden amongst forgotten photographs and moth-eaten clothes, a letter addressed to me in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. The moment I unfolded the fragile paper, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. My mother's handwriting had always been a comforting sight. As I scanned the words, the memories of her voice, warm and soothing, echoed in my mind. She had written of her fears, her hopes, and the secrets that had gone unspoken between us. The letter held a confession that struck me like a thunderbolt. She had known more about the war than she ever let on. It wasn't just the chaos of battle she feared for us. It was the darkness that festered beneath the surface of our home, the weight of family secrets that she had carried alone. I had spent all these years thinking I was the protector of my brother, but it seemed that we had also needed protection from the reality our mother had hidden from us. As I read, tears brimmed in my eyes. I could nearly hear her voice urging me to understand, not just the physical war raging outside our door, but the invisible war within our family. She had written of her sister, my aunt, who had vanished long before the war took its toll. My mother had always claimed she went to another city for work, but the letter revealed a far grimmer truth. Aunt Clara had become entangled in something dark, something that chased her away, leaving my mother to grapple with the fear of following in her footsteps. The weight of the unspoken hung heavy in my heart as I realized my mother's fear for me and my brother was rooted in her own history, one I had been blissfully unaware of. These revelations stirred a pot of old emotions and regrets. I often wondered how different our lives might have been if my mother had shared these fears with us. Perhaps it would have changed the way we viewed the war that shattered our lives, the way we held on to each other through the chaos. My brother and I had bonded fiercely as we faced the danger of our surroundings. We leaned on one another like fragile saplings in a storm. But there was a part of me that longed for that added layer of understanding. If only I had known that our mother was not just the pillar of strength, but also a fragile human being with her own scars, perhaps I wouldn't have felt so alone in my own struggles. In the quiet of my attic, I clutched the letter to my chest, feeling the weight of my mother's words settle within me. This newfound knowledge didn't erase the grief or pain. It gave it context. For years, I had approached my relationship with my brother through the lens of a protector, but now I saw that we were siblings bound by shared trauma, and perhaps by shared secrets. The revelation sparked a hope within me, the hope that we could finally begin to unearth the buried stories of our family, to confront the darkness together, and, in doing so, free ourselves from its grip. The letter had not only unearthed the past, it had ignited a path toward healing, a path I was determined to walk with my brother at my side. I can still feel the coldness of the night when I fled with my baby brother wrapped tightly in my arms, the echoes of gunfire marking the end of our laughter and dreams. Each moment of that desperate escape remains etched in my memory, a vivid reminder of the wounds that never healed. I remember the weight of the letter I held, its creases sharp in my palm, tied to my heart like a lifeline. It was a simple note, but it carried the weight of our mother's love and the hope that we might find safety somewhere, anywhere. I had promised her I would protect him, that I would keep him safe from the horrors unraveling outside our door. The world around us had been engulfed in chaos, but it was in those stolen seconds of quiet that I found the strength to move forward, clinging to the only family I had left. I couldn't allow fear to paralyze me. Every shadow lurking in the alleys felt like a predator waiting to pounce, yet I pressed on. My heart raced, not just from fear, but from the sheer responsibility of holding my brother, barely a year old, against the backdrop of our crumbling lives. I whispered to him, nonsensical words meant to soothe, to distract us both from the reality of our plight. But even as I spoke, I could feel the tremor of uncertainty snaking through me. In the weeks that followed, our days turned into a relentless blur of hiding and running, of seeking shelter in crumbling buildings and abandoned homes. With each passing night, I felt a part of myself splintering under the weight of my promise. The look in my brother's eyes, innocent and uncomprehending, haunted me. How was I to shield him from the violent world that had stolen everything we once held dear? I carried the guilt like a heavy stone, each step forward a reminder of what we had lost. I had traded our home for the unknown, driven by an obligation that felt insurmountable. I often found myself tracing the letters of that note, wishing I could ask our mother what to do, how to make things right. The letter no longer felt like a lifeline. It felt like a burden, a constant reminder of the love that had been ripped from us, leaving behind only jagged edges of sorrow. The last time I read it, I felt the words dissolve into tears that fell onto the page, blurring the ink and my resolve. I longed to return to the safety of her embrace, to hear her voice telling me it would be all right, that I was not alone. But those moments were gone, replaced by an emptiness that echoed through the ruins of my heart. Years have passed since that fateful night, yet the ache remains, festering like an unhealed wound. I've built a life, forged connections, but every laugh shared, every smile offered, is shadowed by the memories of what I once had. My brother grew up so tall and beautiful, but a part of him too carries the scars of our flight. We exchanged stories of our past, his laughter tinged with the same sorrow that lingers in my soul. We were survivors, but survival comes at a price. And though miles and years separate me from that cold night, the fear and the loss are ever present, reminding me that some wounds never truly heal. They simply become part of the fabric of who we are, intricately woven into our hearts, forever reminding us of the love we lost amidst the sounds of war. The sun was setting, spilling golden light through the narrow window where I sat, my fingers trembling as they traced the edges of the old letter I had received that morning. It was a letter that could have easily been lost among the clutter of memories I had saved over the years, the yellowing paper a tangible reminder of a time that felt both distant and achingly close. The handwriting was unmistakable, a script that danced with hope and love despite the chaos it described. It was from my brother, Samuel, a name I hadn't uttered in decades, a name that had become a ghost in my life, a whisper of a bond that war had cruelly severed. As I read the familiar letters, my heart pounded and tears pricked my eyes. The last time I had seen Samuel was during those frantic days of fleeing our home, clutching little Victor in my arms and the weight of despair heavy in my chest. I often thought back to that day, the echoes of gunfire mingling with the screams of mothers who, like me, were wrestling with their own heartbreaks. I had thought I would never see Samuel again. That distance and warfare would erase the bright laughter of my childhood. Yet here I was, sitting in my little kitchen, holding a piece of his spirit in my hands, reading words that felt like a balm for my weary soul. Samuel described his journey, the hurdles he had to jump just to survive. He wrote of the people he met along the way, some who had lost everything, others who had found reasons to smile. There was a sense of resilience in his words that drew me in, making me remember the laughter we shared over simple meals and the adventures we conjured in our tiny backyard. Each stroke of his pen was a reminder that, despite the miles and years that separated us, he was still fighting, still holding on to the memories we shared. I felt the urge to reach out to him, to embrace him once more as I had done when we were children, but uncertainty clouded my mind. Would he recognize the woman I had become? Would he understand the choices I had made to survive? The letter contained details that ignited a flicker of hope that had long been dimmed. Samuel mentioned a small gathering at the old town square, a reunion organized by those who had survived the war, a chance to remember and reconnect. My heart raced at the thought of seeing him again, but dread gnawed at the edges of my excitement. It would mean facing the ghosts of our past, the memories of abandonment and loss that haunted our family. Yet how could I ignore the pull of home, the desire to see him once again, to confirm that the bond we shared had not been broken beyond repair? As I prepared to go, my heart was a tempest of conflicting emotions. I pulled on my coat, the very one I had worn during our flight so many years ago, feeling the weight of history in its fabric. I glanced around my modest home, layers of dust settling over the remnants of a life I had built alone. Little Victor, now grown, yet eternally my baby brother in my heart, would never understand the pain that had led me here. But perhaps he too could find solace in the reunion of a family torn apart by war. I stepped out into the cool evening air, every step toward the square a leap of faith into the unknown, carrying both the weight of the past and the hope of a future tinged with love. The day I found the letter was one I'll never forget. It lay there, tucked away in the corner of an old wooden box, the kind my mother used for keeping precious things. I had almost thrown it away, thinking it was just another crumpled piece of paper, but something urged me to stop. The moment my fingers brushed the faded edges, A flood of memories washed over me, pulling me back to a time when innocence still danced in the air like summer fireflies. But that letter wasn't about innocence. It was a tether to my past, a reminder of everything I had lost and the brother I had tried so desperately to save. As I opened it, the smell of aged paper filled my nostrils, transporting me back to the dim light of our home, the scent of my mother's cooking wafting through the air. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter, my brother's playful squeals as he chased me around the small kitchen, his little legs stumbling over themselves. But for every flash of happiness, there lingered an undertow of pain. The letter was from him, written in the hurried scrawl of a child who was still learning to hold a pen, an earnest plea for understanding and a promise that he would always be with me, no matter what the world thrust upon us. I felt the weight of my heart, thick and heavy, as I read his words. They danced between the lines, like ghosts I could almost touch. The innocence in his writing was a stark contrast to the horrors we had witnessed. I could almost hear his voice, the way he pronounced each syllable, carefully crafting his thoughts as if they were treasures. But the truth settled in, like a stone in my stomach. My brother was long gone, lost in the chaos that splintered our lives when the war began. Thoughts of that day, the day I fled with him in my arms, surged back. The desperation, the fear, and the determination to survive surged through me once more. I had promised him I would keep him safe. When the sirens wailed and the earth shook beneath us, I held him close, refusing to let go. But even now, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed him. Each passing year, every birthday I marked alone, felt like a reminder of my broken promise. The guilt settled heavy around my shoulders, an unwelcome cloak of sorrow. Yet here was a lifeline, his words reaching out across the years, insisting that I carry on, that our bond was not severed by death or distance. In that moment, I confronted the truth of my decisions. The grief I had tucked away for so long now surged like a tidal wave, forcing me to face the choices I had made, and the ones I had yet to accept. As tears spilled down my worn cheeks, I spoke out loud to him, my voice trembling in the quiet of the room. I told him I was sorry, that I had never stopped searching for him, even as I wrapped my heart in a protective layer of silence. I released my fear and my grief into the space around me, hoping against hope that somehow he might hear me. I poured out every unsaid word, every moment I had held back. The air felt thicker, charged with emotion, and I sensed a release within myself. Perhaps my brother was not truly gone. Perhaps he lived on in the strength of my memories and the love I carried in my heart. In confronting the pain, I rediscovered the bond we had forged amidst the chaos. No longer was I just a survivor. I was his sister, woven together by the fabric of our shared past. The air was thick with fear as I clutched my baby brother Alex to my chest, the weight of our circumstances pressing down upon me like a stone. We had been gripped by the chaos of war for far too long. Each day became a dance with uncertainty. My heart raced, not only from the urgent need to escape our reality, but also from the overwhelming responsibility of keeping Alex safe. The letter I held tightly in my hand, an unexpected gift from our father, felt like the last tether to a world that was crumbling around us. It was his voice amidst the din, reminding us of hope, fortitude, and love, even when everything else seemed lost. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I made a decision that would forever change the course of our lives. I had to flee, not just for my safety, but for Alex's future. I took one last look at our shattered home, the place that once provided warmth and laughter, and felt a pang of grief that almost immobilized me. But I had yet to read my father's letter, and its promise of bravery stirred something deep within me. I unfolded the creased paper, my fingers trembling as I scanned the familiar handwriting. His words reminded me that strength does not come from absence of fear, but from the courage to confront it. Just as I was about to tuck the letter away and set off, the sudden crack of a gunshot reverberated through the air, jolting me into a survival instinct I forgot I had. I instinctively crouched low, clutching Alex tighter as the adrenaline surged through me. The world around us transformed into an echo of chaos. I could hear the distant sounds of sirens, the cries of people, and the pounding of my heart. Instead of running, I froze for a moment, paralyzed by the fear of whether I could outrun fate. That's when I made an unexpected decision. I wouldn't just flee blindly. I had to think strategically. Leaving the chaos would mean navigating through safer routes I had only heard whispered about in the shadows. With every ounce of courage, I maneuvered through the thickening night, the letter tucked securely into the folds of my dress. I kept Alex close, our bodies moving in sync, a little unit bonded by shared fear and love. But the shadows of war had a way of creeping into every heartbeat. Just as the path I was on seemed clear, I stumbled upon a group of soldiers, their faces obscured by the masks of war. My mind raced. Should I hide? Scream? My protective instincts flared like a fire ignited within. Instead, I decided to step forward, trying to harness the quiet dignity my father always encouraged. "Please," I spoke, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm just trying to get my brother to safety." The soldiers turned their gazes upon us, their eyes searching for weakness or perhaps bravery. But what struck me was how, in that moment of fear intertwined with hope, I felt my father's spirit guiding me. The soldiers exchanged glances, and one stepped forward, his expression softening at the sight of my baby brother. In an unexpected turn, rather than facing contempt or hostility, I was met with an offer to help, an act of humanity amidst the depravity of war. They escorted us to a more secure route, and as we walked, I realized that sometimes, when you least expect it, kindness breaks through the darkest nights. The day I left home, the air was taut with fear and uncertainty. I was just 14, clutching my baby brother, Antoine, to my chest. My heart raced as I scanned the faces around me, neighbors, friends, and family, their eyes clouded with an unspoken dread. I could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on my shoulders, mingling with the palpable terror that a war could shatter the fragile bonds of our community. They all knew what was at stake, but no one spoke it aloud. They could only cling to a silent hope that tomorrow would not bring more sorrow. As we fled, I could hear whispers echoing behind me, mostly of disbelief, some of blame. How could she? Was a thought I was certain crossed the minds of some who knew me. After all, I was one of the eldest, and I was supposed to be brave, to protect rather than to run. I felt the sting of their judgment. It crept under my skin, igniting a sense of guilt that clung to me like a second skin. But how could I stay? The bombings were relentless, and each day seemed to carve away at my resolve. My responsibility was not to prove my courage to others. It was to keep Antoine safe, even if it meant tearing myself away from everything I'd ever known. Once we crossed the village boundary, the road ahead was a blur, a patchwork of fear, hope, and desperation. I held Antoine close, his small face buried in the crook of my neck, blissfully unaware of the turmoil swirling around us. I often thought of our parents, their faces etched in my memory like a cherished photograph. They had taught us the value of family, the strength of unity. But as I trudged through the dust and debris, the only thing that felt essential was the letter I kept tucked away. It was my lifeline, a testament to the love I had for my family, and a promise that I would find a way back to them, to us. The further we moved, the more the streets became unrecognizable, consumed by the chaos of the war. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was abandoning my family, leaving them to fend for themselves while I took the only survivor in our little duo away from our life. I imagined their faces when they discovered I had fled, the mix of relief and anger, perhaps even betrayal. But deep down, I knew fleeing was our best chance. I had to take action. I had to be more than just a bystander watching our lives unravel around us. The knowledge that I could fight for my brother, no matter how misguided it might seem to others, became the single source of strength in a world turned upside down. As we encountered other families on the run, I could see reflections of my own fears and doubts in their eyes. Some offered reassurances, while others couldn't bear to meet my gaze. Despite their circumstances, I saw mothers clutching their children, fathers shielding their families with a fierce determination that echoed my own. We were all bound by a common thread: love, a desperate need to protect what we held dear amidst the madness surrounding us. Yet, I could feel the weight of judgment lurking just beneath the surface. a cruel reminder of how society often turns against those who take drastic measures for survival. In those moments, I realized that the bonds of family could extend beyond blood. They could be formed in shared grief, compassion, and the unwavering desire to endure, to love, when everything else was falling apart. As I sat on the tattered armchair in the corner of my living room, I could almost feel the texture of the letter in my trembling hands again, as if it were a relic that had slipped through time and rushed back to me. The paper was yellowing and brittle now, its edges curling like the leaves of autumn, but the ink was still legible enough to pull me back into that world of chaos. I had saved it for so long, a time capsule of emotions, that I wasn't sure I was ready to unpack. The words written in my sister's hurried scrawl felt like a lifeline, a plea echoing through the years, reminding me of the bond we had forged even amidst the turmoil of war. Holding my baby brother close, I had fled from our home, clutching that letter, a stubborn beacon of hope against the backdrop of despair. How naive we were, believing we could outrun the shadows that stretched across our land. The war had been an unwelcome guest, creeping into our lives like a thief, stealing our innocence and binding us in a struggle for survival. I remember the sounds, the distant rumble of explosions and the whispers of fear rippling through the frightened villagers. Each day felt like a new chapter in a nightmare we couldn't escape. I had clung to my brother, willing my heart to remain steadfast, to protect him as best as I could. The letter, hidden in the folds of my clothing, was a reminder of my sister's enduring spirit, a voice that bridged the chasm between us. She wrote of her dreams, of the life we once shared, and the plans that had been dashed by the severity of the world outside our door. I could feel her presence with me, guiding my hands as I tried to decipher the tangled mess of emotions that now lay at my feet. It wasn't merely a letter. It was a testament to resilience, a balm for a wounded heart that had been bruised by the relentless hands of fate. Each word seemed to pulsate with life, urging me to remember the laughter we had shared, the secrets whispered in the dark, and the unbreakable bond that war tried, but failed, to sever. Yet, with every word I read, a knot of guilt began to rise in my throat. What had I done? Was I strong enough to carry my brother through this nightmare while leaving our sister behind? The questions gnawed at me, a relentless tide pulling me under. Perhaps I had betrayed her, fleeing into the unknown, while she remained trapped in a reality I had narrowly escaped. The weight of that decision, of choosing survival over loyalty, still hung heavy in my heart. How could I reconcile the love I had for my brother with the ache of leaving my sister behind? In those quiet moments, I found myself wrestling with memories that felt distant yet palpable. Each recollection was a thread weaving together the fabric of my past. I had once seen strength in my ability to protect my brother, to bring him safely to a new life. But now, as I embraced the complexity of my choices, I realized that true strength lay in acknowledging both love and loss. Perhaps it was time to confront the echoes of that war, to rediscover the sister I had left behind in those harrowing days, and in doing so, find a way to honor both lives and the paths we took. The letter was not just a connection to the past, but a call to reclaim a piece of my heart, tethering me to the love and sacrifices we made in those dark days. I often find myself staring at the old wooden trunk tucked away in the corner of the attic. It's weathered and worn, the leather corners frayed from years of handling. Inside, it holds remnants of a life that feels like another world, but it also guards a pain I've come to know intimately. My brother, Anton, and I shared everything: our hopes, dreams, and, more recently, our regrets. The last letter he sent me before the war changed everything. In it, he mentioned the things he believed I needed to hear, the things I wish I could unremember. When the news of his enlistment came, I was torn between pride and dread. He was my younger brother, always the one who admired my strength, who looked up to me like I was a force of nature. I wanted to protect him, to keep him safe from the storm brewing just beyond our borders. I still remember the day we clung to each other, knowing it would be the last time we'd see each other for a long while. I held Nicola, my baby brother, in my arms that day, oblivious to the fear etched onto Anton's face. My heart broke for him, for all of us. What kind of world was we thrust into, where siblings could be pushed apart by war. As the months turned into years, letters became our lifeline. Each envelope that arrived felt like a small miracle, a thread tying us together through the chaos. Anton would write about the mundane, sharing tales of comrades and mundane life, trying to shield me from the madness. But there came a point when his letters began to shift, revealing cracks in his bravado. He wrote about fear, loss, and the toll war took on his soul. I felt helpless, unable to ease his burden or be the sister he needed. I was so far away, holding on to a childhood that was slipping through my fingers, yet here he was, in the thick of it, unraveling. And then came the letter, the one I can't completely bring myself to read anymore. Anton had written that he felt as though he were losing himself, that the war was changing him, turning him into someone he didn't recognize. He apologized, said he felt like a burden, and questioned whether he was the brother I once knew. In his words, I felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken emotions. I wanted so desperately to reach out and reassure him that he would always be my brother, but I let my fear paralyze me. What do you say when the person you love most is drowning in despair? It would be years before I realized the quiet devastation that letter left behind, the fracture it created in our bond. In the aftermath of war, the healing process was a slow, painful journey filled with unexpected detours. The war ended, but my brother returned, a shadow of the boy I had once known. We were both caught in an awkward dance of pretense and unspoken words, unsure how to bridge the chasm that had grown between us. I wanted to reach out, to extend a hand and remind him that he was still the brave boy who once stood by my side, but I feared my words would be like daggers, reminding him of all he had lost. I came to realize that sometimes reconciliation isn't about forcing a connection. It's about sitting in silence together, accepting the wounds we carry, and knowing that healing might look different for each of us. As I sit here in my faded armchair, the creaking of its frame is a reminder of the many years that have passed since that fateful day I fled with my baby brother, Alex, nestled in my arms. The memory is etched in my heart, a permanent scar that refuses to heal. It was during a dark chapter of our lives, a time when war consumed our world, tearing apart families and shattering dreams. I remember the weight of fear on my chest, but also the hope sparked by the letter I clutched tightly in my hand. A letter that spoke of a future where we might find solace away from the chaos, even if it felt like a fragile thread in the storm. That evening was painted with shades of orange as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows on the streets that had once felt safe. I had wrapped Alex in an old, tattered blanket, the one our mother had stitched years before with the same hands that had once rocked him to sleep. Every time he nestled closer, I could feel the warmth of his tiny body against my chest, and it made me want to fight the world around us and protect him at all costs. The letter was from an old friend of our family, a man who had managed to escape to another country. He had written of opportunities lying beyond our borders, and a part of me clung to those words like a lifeline. As I made my way through the abandoned streets, every sound echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of what we were leaving behind. Gunfire in the distance reminded me that we were not alone in our suffering. Countless others were grappling with their own demons. But the letter whispered promises of safety, and I held on to that glimmer of hope. Each step I took was heavier, burdened not only by Alex's weight, but also by the memories of laughter that now felt so distant. I could almost hear my mother singing softly in the kitchen, her spirit fading with each passing moment that we were forced further away from those cherished memories. When we finally reached the edge of our town, a knot settled in my stomach. Ahead of us lay uncertainties, a road fraught with danger and despair. I paused for a moment, my grip tightening around the letter as I looked down at my baby brother, asleep and blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding us. In that moment, I realized that the symbolic gesture of carrying that letter with me was so much more than an escape plan. It was a promise to Alex, a vow that I would keep him safe and that I would one day find him a place where he could laugh and play as he was meant to. I felt the weight of the words I held, knowing they represented a flicker of light amid an ocean of darkness. The journey ahead was treacherous, filled with uncertainty at every turn. Yet I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I had to forge ahead, not only for my sake but for that of my brother. The letter remained close, a constant reminder of hope, resilience, and the love that tied us together. As I took a deep breath and pressed forward into the unknown, I resolved to make every step count, not just for the life that lay ahead, but as a tribute to the past we were leaving behind. In this act of fleeing, I was not merely running away from war, I was running towards the promise of a new beginning, a future where Alex could thrive, where we could heal the wounds that the war had inflicted upon our hearts. And in that gesture, the letter became more than just paper. It became a symbol of our unbreakable bond, a testament to our survival against all odds. As I sit here, cradling the warm cup of tea in my trembling hands, I find myself lost in the memory of that day, the day I fled our home instead of burying it. At once, I feel the frigid wind that swept across our village, echoing the sounds of gunfire and shouts, piercing the stillness of dawn. I was only 16, clutching my baby brother to my chest like he was the last remnant of a life not yet shattered. That fragile letter, signed by my mother, flapped against my side as if it were alive and pleading for me to believe in the future it promised. It seems miraculous that I've arrived at this age, reflecting on the very moments that shaped the course of my life. As the years have unfolded, I've often thought of the weight of that letter. It became both a burden and a guiding light. My mother's words, laced with the hope of a peaceful tomorrow, stayed with me when everything else was stripped away. In a world filled with chaos, her voice resonated with clarity, urging me forward even when the path seemed insurmountable. I carried her faith with me, and it was in those silent moments amidst the violence that I learned how to listen, not just for my own sake, but for my brother's. He was a mere infant, and I often wondered if he could sense the fear I fought to suppress. I think of him now, a man with his own life, but I'll always see glimpses of that helpless babe in arms. However, there were times when I faltered. Night after night I would lay awake, the cries of other families haunting my thoughts. I questioned if we would ever find peace, if I was strong enough to carry not just my brother, but the weight of our family's legacy. Yet, the very act of survival became a lesson in resilience. Each challenge forced me to dig deeper inside myself, unearthing courage I didn't know existed. I remember moments of bleakness, but I also recall how, in those moments of darkness, I fought harder. I became a shield for my brother, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love can ignite a fire that never truly dims. In two worlds, the world we fled and the one we entered, there was an unyielding thread that connected us. That letter was more than just ink on paper. It was a testament to our shared history and the bond that held us together. While the war ripped apart so many lives, it also revealed a different kind of strength within me. My identity as a sister solidified over those harrowing days. I learned that our love could outlast fear and suffering. Even now, as I reminisce, I feel the profound connection we forged under impossible circumstances. My brother became my anchor, and in turn, I became his. As I reflect on the entire journey, I realize it wasn't just about fleeing from the war. It was about reimagining what life could be. Every scar tells a story, and while some memories are laced with confusion and pain, many are filled with love and hope. The greatest gift I've received is the understanding that life will always pose challenges, but it's how we respond to them that truly matters. I continue to hold that letter dear, the words forever etched in my heart. They remind me that strength is found not just in surviving, but in loving fiercely. As I sip my tea, I know that I am not just a remnant of a past conflict. I am a testament to perseverance, ready to embrace whatever life has yet to offer. As I sit here, the soft light of the evening sun warming my hands, I find solace in the memories that have shaped my journey. Each moment, each heartbeat has been woven into the fabric of who I am. The echoes of my past may carry with them shadows of sorrow, but they also gift me with the strength of survival and the love that continues to bloom even in the harshest of landscapes. Holding my baby brother in my arms as we fled, I was both terrified and resolute. I felt the weight of our world pressing down on my small shoulders, yet alongside that weight was an unwavering hope, a flicker of light that kept me moving forward through the chaos and despair. The letter I clutched, a lifeline filled with the words of those I love, became a beacon guiding us toward a future that was uncertain yet filled with possibility. Now, as I reflect on my life, I realize that acceptance is a gentle teacher. It has shown me that while we may not be able to change the past, we can embrace the present with open hearts. The laughter of my grandchildren, the warmth of family gatherings, and the quiet moments of reflection remind me that joy can coexist with pain. Every scar tells a story, a testament to resilience and love that has weathered storms. I find peace in knowing that my story, like yours, is a thread in the intricate tapestry of humanity. If you listened until the end, thank you. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. Maybe the next story we tell here will be yours.